Samyo Hangma Rai, your English instructor, and today we're going to deal with Unit 12, Fantasy, titled Down the Rabbit Hole. So let's begin.
Unit 12, Fantasy, Down the Rabbit Hole. Now read the following extract from a novel where Alice, dozing off as her sister reads to her, jumps down the rabbit hole, falling for quite a while and landing in a mysterious hall. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversations? So she was considering in her own mind as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late." When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it and was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. So Alice and her sister are sitting by the river bank, and Alice's sister is reading a book, but Alice is doing nothing, and she thinks that books without pictures and conversation are of no use. So the day was pretty hot, and it was making Alice feel sleepy, but also stupid. She had contemplated getting daisies to make a daisy chain, to pass the time, of course, since her sister was reading the book. But then when she had just thought about it, a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her, which was nothing remarkable at first, but later she saw that the rabbit was talking, it was wearing a waistcoat, and from the waistcoat it took out a watch. So that was quite amusing to her, because things like this does not happen in reality. Later, she was too curious that she ran after the rabbit, and she saw the rabbit go down a large rabbit hole. In another moment down went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. So the rabbit went in, so did Alice. But she had not thought about how she would get back. She just took an abrupt decision. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way and then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep well. So as you can see in the picture, you can see that it went on straight like a tunnel. But later, the tunnel suddenly dipped. So it went on like this, but suddenly it had a dip. Then she fell. Either the well was very deep or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed. It was labeled orange marmalade, but to her great disappointment, it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody underneath, so managed to put it into one of the cupboards as she fell past it. So, once Alice fell, it seemed either the well was too long or she was falling slowly, because she had plenty of time to do many things. So first she was also able to look down to see what she was going to fall into, but she could not because the well was too dark. Next, she saw that the walls of the tunnel were filled with cupboards and bookshelves, and she saw many things such as maps and pictures, but also she saw a jar of orange marmalade, but it was empty. But she did not throw it, she kept it back because she was afraid that it would hit someone on the head and kill them. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think of me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which was very likely true. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said aloud. I must be getting somewhere near the center of the earth. Let me see. That would be 4,000 miles down, I think. For you see, Alice had learned several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but when I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got to. Alice had not the slightest idea what latitude was or longitude either, but she thought they were nice grand words to say. So we can see that Alice is talking to herself. Alice talked to herself. She kept mumbling things. She was wondering what was the latitude or longitude. Presently she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it'll seem to come out of among the people that walk with the heads downwards. The antipathies, I think. She was rather glad there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is. You know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she'll think me for asking. No, it will never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. When Alice continues to fall, she wonders if she would pop up from the other part of the earth. So imagine if Alice had fallen off this portion, she intended to come out of this portion. So she thought that people were walking on their heads. Like so. But that is just her childlike imagination speaking, and she wondered if she would ask them what country they're from, acting as if she was a very courteous woman, asking in very proper accent. Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do. So Alice soon began talking again. Dinah'll miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dinah was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Dinah, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats? I wonder. And here Alice began to get rather sleepy and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes, do bats eat cats? You see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah and was saying to her very earnestly, Now, Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over. So Alice began thinking about Dinah, her cat. And she also wondered if people would feed her. And not only that, she wondered and she wished if her pet was there with her and if there was no mice with her there. But she did wonder if cats ate bat or the other way around. But when she was imagining all those sorts of things, suddenly she came down and she fell down upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, which marked the end of the fall. Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up onto her feet in a moment. She looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still inside, hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind, and was just in time to hear it say as it turned a corner, "Oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting!" She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked, and when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever to get out again. So when Alice landed, she was a bit hurt, but she was able to recover. And then she saw that the rabbit was still inside, and she heard the rabbit say how late it was getting. So she, without wasting a moment, she ran after the rabbit to see where it was going, and then she found herself in a hallway where there were a row of lamps hanging from the roof, and there were so many doors of so many shapes and sizes, and she tried to open each and every one of them, but unfortunately they were all locked. And it made Alice quite sad, because she was now wondering how she was going to go home, how she was going to get out of the place she was in. Suddenly she came upon a little three-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it but a tiny golden key, and Alice's first idea was that this might belong to one of the doors of the hall. But alas, either the locks were too large or the key was too small, but at any rate it would not open any of them. However, on the second time round, she came upon a low curtain she had not noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight, it fitted. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to get out of that dark hall and wander about among those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains, but she could not even get her head through the doorway. And even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be of very little use without my soldiers. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could, if only I knew how to begin. For you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things indeed were really impossible. So when she went inside her room, she saw a table which had three-legged, which was all made up of glass. There she saw a tiny little golden key, but which was too small to fit in any other doors. So Alice, later, she was able to notice a small little door, and she was happy that the golden key fit. And when she opened it, she was able to see that there was a lovely garden behind that small door. But Alice, she was too big to fit inside the door. So she wished if she could shrink and fall like a telescope. But alas, she could not. There seemed to be of no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. This time she found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not here before, said Alice, and tied round the neck of the bottle was a paper label with the words, "Drink me," beautifully printed on it in large letters. So before there was no cup on the table, but later she noticed that there was a cup, and on the cup it was written, "Drink me." It was all very well to say, "Drink me," but the wise little Alice was not going to do that in a hurry. "No, I'll look first," she said, "and see whether it's marked poison or not," for she had read several nice little stories about children who had got burnt and eaten up by wild beasts and other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such as that a red-hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. And she had never forgotten that. If you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it, and finding it very nice, it had, in fact, a sort of mixed flavor of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast. She very soon finished it off. "What a curious feeling," said Alice. "I must be shutting up like a telescope." So Alice looked for a label which said poison, but luckily for her, there was no such labels. So Alice, she drank it, and when she drank it, she felt that the drink was very tasty, and then she started feeling something. So for her, that feeling was something different. She felt as if she was shutting up like a telescope. And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and her face brightened up at the thought that she was now the right size for going through the little door into that lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this, for it might end, said Alice to herself. "I'm going out altogether like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then." And she tried to fancy what the flame of a candle looks like after the candle is blown out, for she could not remember ever having seen such a thing. After a while, finding that nothing more happened, she decided on going into the garden at once. But alas for poor Alice! When she got to the door, she found she had forgotten the little golden key, and when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it. She could see it quite plainly through the glass, and she tried her best to climb up one of the legs of the table, but it was too slippery. And when she had tired herself out with trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. "Come, there's no use in crying like that," said Alice to herself rather sharply. "I advise you to leave off this minute." She generally gave herself very good advice, though she very seldom followed it. And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears into her eyes, and once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet which she was playing against herself, for this curious child was very fond of pretending to be two people. "But it's no use now," thought poor Alice, "to pretend to be two people. Why, there's hardly enough of me left to make one respectable person." So after Alice drank it, she felt curious, but now she had shrunk from her normal size into a 10-inch person. She was extremely happy that she had shrunken down because she would now be able to go into the 15-inch door. And she was now 10 inches. But to her tough luck, she forgot the golden key on the table. She tried to console herself, but unfortunately she couldn't. And she also liked to pretend to be two people as she gave advice to herself. Soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it and found in it a very small cake on which the words "Eat me" were beautifully marked in currants. "Well, I'll eat it," said Alice, "and if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key, and if it makes me grow smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care which happens." She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, "Which way, which way?" holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way was it growing, and she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, this is what generally happens when one eats cake, but Alice had got so much into the way of expecting nothing out of the way things to happen that it seemed quite dull and stupid for it to go on in the common way. So she set to work and very soon finished off the cake. By Lewis Carroll. So Alice, after she had given up on looking for solutions, she found a little glass box, and inside the glass box, the words "Eat me" were written. So Alice, she thought, if I eat the cake, I would either grow or either I would shrink. Either ways, she would either be able to go inside the table or she would go back to her size. It did not matter to her. So she ate a little bit of cake and she was expecting whether she was growing or she was shrinking. But nothing happened. And that is exactly what happens in reality. When we eat cake, we don't grow taller or shrink in size. We just remain the way we are. But Alice had gotten so accustomed to unexpected things happening to her, she expected that eating the cake, something unexpected would also happen to her. But unfortunately, it did not go as she has expected it to go. So she set to work and she finished eating the cake. Homework: ways with words. Find the meanings of the following words and phrases from a dictionary and make sentences. The first one is peep into. So the meaning of peep into is to peer or glance at something shyly. So the sentence you can make is, the student peeped into the teacher's room to ask for a book. Similarly, solve these other questions. Pop down, remarkable, hedge, wonder, tumble, doze off, earnestly, tiny, and creep. Next, number B, match the words below with their opposites. Let me do one for you. Number A, beginning. B, stupid. C, natural. D, disappointment. E, ignorant. And F, anxiously. 1, happiness. 2, calmly. 3, educated. 4, clever. 5, artificial. And 6, ending. So, the opposite of beginning is ending. So, you write your answer A as such. Similarly, please solve these other questions. If you have any queries, feel free to email us at learning@dearwalk.edu.np. Thank you very much.